Welcome everyone, Costin here with a guide for Alien Dark Descent, and probably the last video I am going to do for a while, or at least until the next patch comes out where they remove the prologue. I am tempted to do a playthrough with a less permissive save system, but we'll see when they do decide to release the patch, the next patch for the game, or they remove the mandatory prologue section, which isn't a particularly great one. Now, I've done an essential guide for this game. I've also done an in-depth guide going over the classes, research, etc. But what I really want to do in this video, and I was inspired by comments from people asking me, how do you deal with stress? Well, how you deal with stress is you play missions in the most efficient way possible. And that's what this guide is about, how to dominate in every mission that you may encounter in the game from very early on. When I say very early on, after your first 2 deployments, maybe even after the first deployment, depends on how aggressively you want to push with that. Though I would personally recommend you go for 2 deployments, and then on the 3rd, you really start to dominate the campaign, as it were. Now, there are 4 things that are going to be essential in every campaign. Everything else is important, don't get me wrong, like having every single class in the game, leveling them up, having xenotechnology from the lab, etc., etc. All of that is important. But here are the 4 essential things you want to have in every mission of the campaign. And you should be able to get them in every mission past the first couple of ones, maybe even just past the first 2. Depends on how lucky you are with RNG when it comes to leveling classes. So what you are going to need is as follows.
See you around. Hello, man.
You are going to want to have 2 recons. At least 1, though keep in mind if you only have 1 after every deployment, they're going to get tired. Now, the reason you want a recon, a sniper, is because a sniper gets a sniper rifle. Now, the sniper rifle has an ability. This ability allows you to do a precision shot. This will one-shot kill almost every enemy in the game, with the exception of like the boss level enemies or the mini bosses. So queens, centurions, praetorians. Outside of those, a sniper rifle shot, which does cost command points, is going to insta-kill everything. And the recon from level 3, when you first acquire a recon, because at level 3 you choose the class for a marine, you can, for a recon, you can get the silencer. So while it is ideal to get recon marines to a high level, it isn't necessary. What you really want is a sniper rifle and a silencer. Now, beyond just requiring the marine, this is also going to require you to get the sniper rifle itself, which you do from the workshop. It is available from the very start after your first proper deployment. It is going to cost 100 materials to get the sniper rifle and 30 materials to put the silencer per individual sniper.
Salute.
So 130 to get your first sniper, 30 after that for every single one of them. That's the first thing. The reason this is important is that you really don't want to be detected by enemies for as long as possible, and this is the only way that's available. I mean, you can avoid the enemies, you can avoid getting in their line of sight, you can play that game of cat and mouse, but if you can eliminate them, you're going to have a much, much easier time with everything. So that's the first thing to worry about. The second thing is to get a hacker. Now, this can, a hacker that can open doors. Ideally, a full hacker is better. Hacker that can just open doors can be done with just the smartass attribute, though a proper technology guy, a tech guy, is going to require you to get a hacker marine. These guys will do more than just open doors. They'll allow you to repair damaged synthetics, which are engineers, and they won't require you to spend material. They won't require you to get to spend an attribute point on the smartass skill, because by default they will have that ability. Hacking doors is so essential in this game because it opens a lot of avenues of advancing. So those are 2 things. The third thing that you're going to want to ensure your success, though it's less important than all the other things on this list, but the third thing is a flamethrower. The reason you want the flamethrower is not to deal with the aliens or humanoid enemies, but it's rather to deal with the alien eggs, because alien eggs can detect you, so you can get out of stealth, you can be hunted by enemies, but you can use the flamethrower to eliminate them quietly. It is a bit ridiculous how they decide to do that, because aliens don't see, they rely on sound, and it's like, flamethrower is gonna do some sound, some noise, so yeah, not a great thing. The fourth and final thing are sentry guns. Max these guys out after the first deployment or second deployment. Go with as many of them as you can. Ideally maxed out, and you can certainly max them out after your second deployment. So those are the 4 things that are essential for the success of any mission. Without a sniper rifle in particular, a silent sniper rifle, things are just going to get much harder. People ask me, how do you deal with stress? You don't get seen. To not be seen, you gotta eliminate them somehow using stealth. The sniper rifle is the way to do it. So I am going to deploy over here on the Dead Hills map. And I've already done the vast majority of the map here. Now, here's how you should view maps. Maps in general, with some exceptions, but for the most part, maps are going to be split off in sections. And it's going to be pretty obvious where like the cutoff point is, basically where you should retreat or where you should consider retreating. On the first map, and before I deploy, on the first map is the section here. Why? Because when you get the objective to go here, there's a container, you activate that, and you get a mini boss fight here. And you get the save point just before you activate the container. The game will literally tell you there's a boss fight coming, and the game will do this quite often. Now, here's the thing. You could decide to kill this mini boss, and that might be the way you have to do it. Or you could get your Marines out just before you enter this section, because you'll enter from the north, have to make your way here. And I would basically recommend you do everything else that is available in this first mission. Getting a good early start is important. I would recommend doing everything else, getting all the objectives. There's only 2 combat sections that you have to engage in. That's the thing to know. In vast majority of missions, you are going to have some mandatory combat sections. This is a stealth strategy game, so you want to avoid as many enemies as long as possible, but you also do have those mandatory combat sections that you will have to deal with. So just bear that particular aspect in mind. For this mission, there's only 2 mandatory combat sections before this boss here, and there's one here in the vet clinic. And then there's another here where you find a bunch of facehuggers, and you won't have a flamethrower at this point, so you'll have to go loud, and you will be detected. Those are the only 2 mandatory sections. And basically, you should do everything else. Find as many resources as you can get, especially on the higher level. Like, you could just leave some resources on the lower levels be for a second deployment. When I say resources, I'm not talking about materials. Always get materials when you find them. But I'm talking here for things like, bullets, for instance, tools, medkits, because you may reach the medkit capacity. And just get out before you deal with this boss, come back with a squad of raw recruits with sentry guns. They will kill this mini boss. Just raw recruits with sentry guns will slaughter this guy and then clear out everything else. Now, you could theoretically do everything on the surface level of this mission in one single go, but the reason that's not ideal is because of the way the game is designed for the very first deployment, in that certain objectives will only come up after you leave for the first time. So there's an objective to find a bunch of materials that will only come up after your first deployment. There's an objective to get xeno samples. Now, xeno samples can drop from any enemy, but they will be a guaranteed drop from these kind of mini bosses like the one that spawns here. So yeah, if you want to min-max it, you may just want to wait. Though I've always killed the mini boss, the Crusher here, before I ended my first deployment, so I can't tell you for certain if you get that objective after you kill the Crusher. No, I think you do get the objective regardless of what you've done. Like, regardless of how much you've completed a map, you'll always get the objective for materials, and you'll get the objective for xeno samples after that first deployment, regardless of how you clear, now that I remember it. So waiting until you kill the Crusher until you get the objective to get xeno samples, which can help you out, is a smart thing over there. Also, just for this first map, there are a bunch of materials here. There are a bunch of materials here that you can get. They're unguarded. Get them on your first deployment. They'll help you out on the second and the third. And on the second deployment, there is an objective. All the objectives on the first map are mandatory. There's no optional objective. There's an objective that will bring you here, and you'll get 100 materials from that. And once you get everything on the surface, and you've dealt with some enemies to potentially level up, that's the point where you, like, basically your second deployment should stop by the mine entrance. By this point, with the second deployments, yes, you're increasing alien infestation. But by this point, you should have cleared everything on the surface, have a sniper, have a flamethrower, have a silenced sniper rifle, but have both a recon and, of course, tech guy to use it. I would say the sniper is the only thing that really matters. Like, you could do the third deployment without a tech guy. It's not crucial, but it would be nice to have it. Now, let's just deploy it. So I've selected my deployment point there. So in this first map, there's 3 sections. You've got the first surface part until the crusher, then the second part, which would be your second deployment, after the crusher or just before the crusher, until you clear out the surface, get the xeno samples, get the materials, and then the third section, which is the mine. So I'm going to do the mine, and that's something you need to figure out about every mission. It's like every mission has like these kind of cutoff points. Like in the first map, the game will literally tell you that maybe you should get out of there after you've killed the crusher. That's how the game was designed. But I would recommend you get out before you kill the crusher, come back with the xeno sample objective, because it will just give you more xeno samples. And it will also help level up your raw recruits, because your first deployment, yeah, those guys are going to get a bunch of experience from all the objectives they're doing, but bringing a bunch of raw recruits to get that crusher will also help them level up. And for the third deployment here, well, I have a bunch of Marines here that are 3 of them are level 3, so I've got a sergeant, a tech guy, a recon, and I've also got someone that's rank 2. I think I am going to swap the sergeant. I would swap the sergeant for Horus, but I just don't have Marines right now that are not tired, except, that are not tired. And it's not a good idea to deploy Marines that are tired. You do want to build like 2 full squads. Like, that's 10 Marines, 1 of each class, essentially. That would be your ideal situation, because that way you can cycle between them. Because even if you do things perfectly, you don't get anyone injured, their stress levels don't increase, they're always going to have that tired effect, unless you have an attribute to deal with that. Anyway, so I have 1 flamethrower, I have 1 sniper rifle, they've all got the pulse rifle and the service pistol. Now, inventory-wise, I've already chosen the inventory. The save I loaded for this video was just the pre-mission deployment one, so I already maxed out my resources here. I spent all the materials, so I'm going with as many medkits and tools. If you're going to deploy a mission, I'd strongly recommend going more tools than medkits, and I always try and max out the sentry guns, because sentry guns are very rare to find in missions. You will find a bunch of tools, you'll find a bunch of medkits, far more so than you might need. Someone mentioned to me that you can actually convert medkits to tools. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't know why. Anyway, so let's just deploy here. Now, I've disabled the dialogue volume completely, so you won't hear any of the character chit-chat or any of the story stuff, because I do have things to say. Now, when you deploy in a mission, the enemy aggression is always going to be low. So at this point, you do want to avoid engaging in combat, but you also want to move as quickly as possible. It's later on where you might want to move cautiously. Like, once you get detected, or once the mission has gone on for a bit, you may want to slow down in terms of how you're moving. The reason you may want to slow down is how detection works. So the way aliens see you is like, if you're moving fast, they will see you faster. Like, they'll detect you faster. Well, they don't see you, they detect you. Though it also does work based on line of sight, weirdly enough. So over here, I'm just going to grab some bullets. I got the data pad over there. The ARC is just going to stay on the surface. Now, bullets, when it comes to ammo clips, there's no way to bring more at the beginning of a mission unless you have certain attributes on certain Marines. There are upgrades you can get for materials, but generally, like, I've done an entire Nightmare playthrough without that. I think there's only been a handful of situations where I felt I could have used more bullets from the start of a mission. So anyway, we're deploying the mine. We want to move as quickly as possible, but we also want to pick up as much stuff as possible. Try and pick up as much stuff as possible early on in a mission, because later on you're going to have other things on your plate, like the horde of murdering Xenos that are going to want you to eat, to infest you. So, okay. So I'm getting materials, I am getting ammo, I am getting tools, I'm getting everything. Now, there's a body there, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. Bodies may give you a bit of materials. They might also have tools and medkits. Now, I want to move slowly here, because this is, like, these kind of missions are the worst kind to actually encounter. The reason is, my sniper there is the one actually, like, one of the things that's kind of annoying about it's like you need to use the sniper to get by in stealth, but you can't just control the sniper. You have to control the entire squad, and you can't decide, hey, who's the guy who's going to be on point, because you obviously would want the sniper to be the one on point. Now, so I've killed one alien there. No, don't do that, you damn. Okay. Okay, so there's an alien. Damn it. Now, early on, when you're this early in a campaign, your window to actually get those kind of precision shots is going to be fairly tricky. Later on, it gets easier. So the more so when you level a recon, you can make it harder. You can make it harder for upgrades, class upgrades, xenotechnology, all that, for aliens to actually detect you. That's something you are going to want to use. You can also use these motion trackers. The main purpose of a motion tracker is not to show you like what's in an area. No, the main purpose of a motion tracker is going to be to help you out by offering a distraction, because you can remotely detonate any motion tracker. And okay, gotta be careful. You can remotely detonate any motion tracker to cause a distraction. Now, I'm playing this game of cat and mouse, but right now I'm avoiding combat, and I'm doing this deliberately. It is annoying, I'm not gonna lie to you. Let's check that body, since I'm unlikely. Alright, there's more and more aliens. The more you spend in a mission, like you don't have unlimited time. Like eventually you will be detected. That's unavoidable. But the longer you can avoid that detection, the better off you'll be. Now there is an alien, and I know he's there. And I want to be careful, so I am just going to put down a sentry gun here. When you know you're going to engage in combat, or you're very likely to engage in combat, just put down a sentry gun. Damn it, that's not going to be good enough. Alright, I am detected. But I got pretty far without being seen. And if not for the particulars of the terrain here, I would have actually gotten far further. Now, I'm going to detonate that motion tracker there in order to give myself some breathing space while I get these supplies. Creating those kind of and I'm going to set up another motion tracker here in order to create even more distraction for the aliens. Once the aliens start hunting you, you need to just Like, avoid where... Like, get the hell out of the position you're in, because that's where they're going to go first. Unless you cause a distraction like with a motion tracker. You can use mines on the motion tracker. People have done that. Now, I've rarely seen the reason to get mines. Because you can kill one alien, sure, fair enough. But there are obviously going to be limitations. Let's get that ammo. Do I still have... This is the annoying part. Okay. You keep moving. And, like, yeah, when you're hunted, your stress levels are gonna start to go up as long as the hunt goes on. And the hunt is also gonna start increasing the aggression meter of enemies. But now the aliens, now I've reached this particular door, I am relatively safe for the time being. So now I've reached this door. I am going to put down a turret here to cover my backside, because I know that there are aliens behind me and they will go for me. And let's open this. And the game is telling me, okay, danger incoming, there's a boss level. When you know something like this is going to happen, well, do what I'm doing here. Put down turrets. There's a boss that I'm going to deal with. People ask me, how do you deal with Alien Queen? Well, so this is how. You just put down a bunch of turrets before every queen. If you're forced, and most of the time you can do this before you enter a room and it will work, but if you're forced to put down a turrets in the room with the queen, you might just want to draw her out of the room anyway into your gun line. That's the way to kill queens or bosses in general. It's like, don't expect your marines to be going boss hunting on their own. You need to get sentry guns. Sort out. Now here it's not ideal because I do have the corridor behind me, which aliens will be coming from. And there we go. There's the pre-beast herself, and we're gonna just drop a flare, and the sentry guns are gonna sink. Now, grenades can slow down the queen. And as I expected, since I saw that alien in the back. Now, one of the things you want to pay attention to is where these icons are, because those, what they represent is like the spawn points of aliens. And you want, like, if you're gonna be stuck in a room like this, you want, there's a sentry gun there. That's good, because that will allow me to put down a sentry gun, let's see here, to cover my backside, while picking this one up, taking it with me. It would be nice to be able to control which sentry gun you were going to deploy, because like deploying the highest ammo one is not necessarily ideal. But okay, our objective. Okay, enemies are near. Okay, where? All right. Now I'm going to put another turret down here. But I am going to pick that one up with me. Now I'm still at a low level because I haven't really been hunted a lot. So I'm not really concerned at the moment. But we're gonna have to carry this particular doctor. It's the vet we find earlier. She gets, like, you find her, the aliens... the aliens figure out what you're gonna do. Now, however, I need to lower the stress levels. There are two ways of lowering stress. The first one are the pills. That I'm just using right here, and you can see another alien spawned. Okay. Right there. Now, however, we're gonna get an unpleasant situation that we can't control. I am going to have to set down my turrets as best I can. When you're in this kind of uncertain situation, you're going to be attacked potentially on multiple directions. It isn't ideal to put your turrets in facing multiple multiple directions like that. Now, I am lowering the stress level, and I'll explain why I'm wasting my medkits on this. Well, in this case, I'm wasting my medkits like this because I have no other alternative. Usually there is an alternative to this, and that's finding a room, you weld the door, the hunt ends, you rest, you lower the stress. I don't have that luxury in this mine. So I'm having to use medkits. Medkits can lower stress by 100, but generally speaking, it is better to use the rooms. The reason... the reason behind that is it's less intensive on the resources. Okay, so the aliens are spawning, and they're going to come from that one. So I need to redeploy my turrets to face in that particular direction. Like when an onslaught happens, like the way it works, as you get hunted, eventually build up this meter. Once you reach a certain point on that meter, the aliens are going to launch a massive fucking hunt against you. And you gotta pay attention to where that hunt is going to be coming from in order to effectively deal with it. So in this case, I know that they're gonna be coming from here. Alright, so we got a xenomorph queen, actually. Oh, interesting. Also, some higher tier enemies may spawn. Now, when an onslaught happens, a bunch of like enemies are gonna spawn from one of these sinkholes, but it will take them some seconds until they start spawning. So you have time to set up defenses. You gotta appreciate which angle they're going to come from, and you gotta prepare. Okay. Now, in this case, I am going to have to leave which one? Alright, we're going to... Hold on. It's this one. Now I am going to detonate that to draw attention from all the other enemies. Leave that turret, that fifth turret with the lowest ammo there. Leave the one with the lowest ammo because turrets can die pretty quickly. They have no way of slowing down. They have no way of slowing down enemies. Alright. Now I'm going to use a tool here so I can get the shotgun blast. Okay. And I've detonated I've detonated that, so let's just get a move on. Whatever other aliens gonna come, they're gonna come from that direction, hopefully. If they come from this place, that isn't gonna be great. My intent is for the sentry gun that I left behind to give me some breathing space that I desperately need. Alright, so we're getting more elite xenomorphs. So as you build this aggression meter, you build towards onslaughts, and you build towards elite enemies spawning on a map. So in this case, the game is telling me that elite enemies have spawned on the map, and I need to basically be careful. Alright, just gotta pay attention. That is one of those, so I can't exactly fight that. Now, it's just about being careful. But I am slowed down significantly by the fact that I am carrying Civi. If you ever have to carry a Marine in a mission, that mission is over. You're not going to complete the objectives there. Now, I could kill that, and I think I do want to. So I'm just going to deploy the turrets. Turrets can deploy pretty quickly. So let's just drop the civilian there. Now, the reason I want to kill that... Okay. We're gonna deploy a flare. Flares do help with accuracy. Be aware, crushers will hurt. Now I just need to get the GTFO out of here, basically. That was not necessarily my finest moment, I gotta tell you. But you gotta roll with sometimes you just gotta roll with how things have turned out. Now, why is it important to kill crushers, though, in this case? Why am I risking that? Well, one, because I'm being foolish. I am. I want to be clear. What I am doing here is extremely foolish. Because I am carrying a person, I'm being hunted by aliens, the aggression is high, the stress level is high. I am certainly pushing my luck, let's say that. Okay, so stress level went up there. It's probably going to go up. On some of these Marines. And the way that works... with regards to stress, or at least the way I think it works, I'm not entirely 100% certain, but the way I think it works is like, you have stress tiers, right? You start at tier 0, then you go all the way to tier 3 and max stress in a mission. This gives you temporary debuffs, but those stress levels translate into trauma points. So every level, every tier of stress that you go above tier 1 will put the trauma point. So in this case, these two, pretty certain they're going to get 1 trauma point each. Now, I could rest over here to reduce the stress, but I'm not being hunted right now, and I do have a much better rest area that I can use. The mission is complete. I just need to escort the doctor here. I do need to get her out to win this mission. Honestly, I'd be tempted to just leave her be in this case, but objectives are objectives, right? I mean, she is a physician, and those are pretty damn rare, so it is useful to get her out. But in this case, like, I could create a safe room here, but I've dealt with the aliens, and the aliens were in the mines. it doesn't necessarily like when you get to a higher level of aggression, it doesn't necessarily mean that on all levels of a map that aliens are going to be as aggressive as the other. So in this case, they're obviously very aggressive in the mine, but they're not so aggressive on the surface. Now, why did I kill that Crusher? Well, the way you gain experience in missions is doing objectives, defeating onslaughts, and killing those kind of elite enemies. Killing a bunch of the regular enemies won't give you shit, so that's why you want to avoid them. But killing those elite type enemies, that will give you experience. So that's why I picked that fight. That's why I set up all those sentry guns. That's why I risked everything on that, even though it could have gotten very, very ugly there. You need to weigh the risks. You also really don't want to take any kind of HP damage, because every point of HP damage you take on a mission is going to require time in the medbay. The more damage you take overall in a mission, doesn't matter if you're healing it during the course of the mission, every bit of HP damage you take is going to require medbay. Every stress level is going to require you to deal with the trauma. Like in this case, each of these guys has gotten 1 trauma point each at least. And now we set up a wall. Like you just use a tool in a room like this. You close all the entrances and you reduce the stress. By default 100, but in this case I have a negative trait that this conspirator that goes only, that basically means 90. Now, when you weld the door like that, you interrupt any alien hunt. And that is the key of success over there. And you can rest in the same, like if you have a high level of stress on your Marines, you still will gain the trauma points. Like let's say you have to, you're in tier 2 level of stress. Well, you're still gonna have the trauma point. You're still gonna have those trauma points, but you can at least remove the temporary negative effects. Now, the smart thing to do over here would be to get out of here. Sticking around won't give me much. I can get. It is, I think, 1 experience point per onslaught. And yes, I am looking to trigger that deliberately. Though maybe not by killing that one. That was not necessarily my finest move. But I am looking to trigger it deliberately. Now, here's what you need to know. You only get trauma points as long as your stress level, I think, doesn't go over 100. And as long as you have tools to create safe rooms, you can fight an infinite number of enemies. And onslaughts won't stop. Like, 2 is kind of considered the maximum. But it's not because 2 is the number, the limit of onslaughts that you can get. It's rather because when you get 2 onslaughts, you're gonna get to the high level of aggression. And when you get to a high level of aggression, things are going to get freaking ugly very, very quickly. Now, over here, I would set up a safe zone inside the sheriff's office. It is actually a safer zone, but I've encountered bugs, and I am looking to deliberately trigger an onslaught for experience. And maybe even, get some of those elite enemies as well. Now, of course, as I said, it's not as good because we don't have... I'm going to reload over here. Because we don't have the ability to just set up a safe room and interrupt the hunt whenever the hell we want. But all the same. It is going to trigger. Here it comes. We're going to get to hard aggression level. Now, what do those aggression levels mean? Easy, normal, easy, average, hard. Well, the higher the aggression level, the more enemies there are going to just prowl around a particular level. Now, in this case, we can see where they're going to be coming from. I'm surprised no one else has come. Like, I would have expected somebody. That's why I set up a suppression room. Like, they're gonna come from here, gonna get hit by the ARC. Is a great kill zone. And we're just gonna get out of here shortly thereafter. Here they come. When... That's weird. So we got a Xenomorph Queen being spotted there. Where? Alright. Game? That's bizarre. That's a bug, by the way. Like, I thought it was happening because of the terrain in the sheriff's office, but no, apparently it's just a bug where sometimes you want to trigger an onslaught and you just can't. I'm just gonna reload, actually. I am deliberately looking to trigger an onslaught because of what I want to do here, and what you should want to do is find this kind of location where you can have like an amazing kill zone, and you deliberately trigger onslaughts as long as you have tools to, you know, reset the hunt when the stress is getting too high or after the onslaught has happened. It's probably going to take two full hunts to be able to trigger an onslaught. But every onslaught is what, 1 experience point, I think. Every elite enemy is 1 experience point. Okay. So now we just fall back into the good sheriff's office and we just pop down those 4 turrets. Now, another reason you might want to trigger onslaughts. Oh shit. That's not good. Well, he took a bunch of damage. But another reason you might want to trigger onslaughts is, let's say you have a major objective, you know it's going to be difficult to deal with. You may want to trigger the onslaught so that the second one is further away, so you have breathing space. Like, the worst thing that can happen is, like, let's say you're doing some main objective, it's requiring a lot of movement across a lot of terrain. That means you're not safe, you're not secure, you're vulnerable. If this one bugs out, I'll just reload and get out of here, because it's like, this is silly. But you may want to trigger certain onslaughts at certain times, simply because you want to remove that. You are going to face onslaughts. That's not something you can avoid. The number of aliens is infinite at the end of the day. Okay, let's not be heroes here, because that's a surefire way of getting ourselves killed. Now, when an onslaught initially triggers, like once you fill up this aggression meter, what will happen is that enemies in the nearby vicinity, that's why all the guys here came for me, will start moving towards you. They will know where you are. And then after like 20 seconds, a massive alien wave is going to start heading your way. That is precisely what's going to happen here. Unless it bugs out. Again. If it bugs out again, I just reload and get out of this mission. It's like, that is a bit bizarre. I admit, I've never had that. It might just be a question of this particular map, or what I'm trying to abuse. Alright, here I come. I mean, I've certainly seen aliens get stuck in walls, right? Now, it doesn't matter that the ARC is killing them. You won't get experience either way for killing for this. It matters to defeat the onslaught. And as you can see, we just gained 1 experience for that. And now we are being hunted. Let's just pick up the sentry guns and get out of here. Our stress level is low enough that it shouldn't be a problem. So we get all those Xeno samples. That's another reason you might want to deliberately trigger onslaughts, is just getting a good supply of Xeno samples. Let's just get out of here. Come on, come on. Let's extract, and that is the mission. And that's how you dominate in every mission that you play. Like, just these principles. Obviously, it depends. It's very different dependent on the map. Very different dependent on the scenario you're dealing with, what squad you have. But bringing snipers, bringing incinerators, even if I didn't use the incinerator, I could have obviously used the incinerator, like, yeah, that one facehugger, but I didn't get bothered by that. Usually you use the incinerator on entire rooms of facehuggers, not individual ones. Though it could have made it easier. So we got 3 days in the medbay. All of them are tired except this one because he has a trait. And yeah, all of them get various days in the medbay based on the damage they've taken. And you can see they gained some level of trauma. 1 point, 1 point, based on the stress damage they took. So if you avoid going over those stress thresholds, you won't ever have to deal with high levels of trauma in your campaign. That's what's important. It isn't ideal to use a medkit the way I did, but it was a specific situation. We killed 40 drones, 4 facehuggers, 1 crusher. Yet we fired almost 2,000 bullets. Okay then. And now we go into the lab, and I now have access to all of the upgrades.
Finally, a project
now,
worthy of
I kind of lied at the beginning of this video. I said there are 4 essential things. There are 5 essential things for every mission. The 5th one,
a fine study, if I may say so,
is the
myself.
stasis grenade. The why? It puts a 50% speed penalty on all enemies caught in it blasts for a short period of time. So a couple of seconds, any enemy that's coming your way will be slowed down. The embryo extraction is not important. Kevlar plates are. I feel horrible because, like, I lost my saves on my initial campaign and I had to redo all the missions again. So the campaign uploaded on my channel is like, I ignored to get this particular upgrade, which would have made my fucking life easier. Yeah, this is also important because armor can't be regenerated, but armor will protect you from going into the med quarters. So that's why it is important. We also got an extra physician, so we're just gonna put that, like, what the med bay by default. Well, I'm saying, like, will every day will reduce 1 day. Simple as that. Doctors can further reduce that, but by an extra day.
Ma'am.
That's simple. Bye,
ma'am.
Okay, and that's all I did for that day.
New objectives are awaiting your review.
Alright, let's put, let's just get him exhausted. That's fine.
Have a nice
Sometimes
day,
you just gotta roll
Deputy
with what you got.
Administrator Hayes.
Alright, I could get him.
This one's a priority.
Let's go with that.
Understood. Hello, Administrator Hayes. Have a nice day.
And
Deputy
you don't necessarily
Hayes.
want to use your physicians at the beginning of each mission.
Bye, man.
Now, I can get the smart gun, but probably smarter to not do so at the
Hello,
moment, because
Administrator Hayes.
if I did that, I would not
Operations
have
ready
anything
in
left
following
for
areas.
supplies. And now I
Understood.
would obviously look
Uploading
to
mission
deploy
data.
my squad. Though I wouldn't necessarily be looking for the very best people I do have, because, like, when you initially go in a mission, and this is important, when you initially go in a mission, you can afford to send, like, the crappier guys. And in this one, in this specific mission, I'm even going to go without the recon. Like, you can actually go without the recon in the initial phase of a map, because that's when you can actually just avoid enemies by just, you know, walking through them. But over here, let's see. He is tired. If I send him again, he's going to be exhausted. So I'm just going to give him some time to breathe, and I'm just going to bring these 4 Marines. That's how I would approach this situation. I don't need a flamethrower. Granted, I know what mission this is going to be like, right? So I know that I'm not really going to need this initially, or for much of it. And I'm just going to go with free tools, free medkits. Maybe even dropping it down to 2. So I could go with the smart gun. Interesting. Anyway, that is just the essential of it. You do want to rotate Marines in and out until you build like a full squad. Like, in an ideal world, you'd probably have 15 Marines, like 3 of each class, But that's like the fantasy world, right? Try and have at least 2 of each class in a campaign, so you can rotate them between missions, try not to take damage, or reduce the damage you're taking. I've talked about like what you want to level up very quickly, but it is important to get the gunner very quickly. It is important to get the tech expert quickly. But mid-game, sergeants are important, gunners are important in the mid-game, and a medic is really important in the end game. Even if you do avoid taking a lot of damage, it will still help you out a significant amount. Anyway, that is all there is to say on the subject. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications, and stay tuned for more.